Welcome to episode 40 of the UK Sports Chat podcast. My guests today are Nina Davies and Edd Baldry from Byrd.run, which is a new EQAI coaching platform which works with everyday life and is built around you. There's no doubt that as technology has progressed and it advances, it plays more of a role in all aspects of our lives. This was a very intriguing chat about Byrd. I hope you enjoy listening to how artificial intelligence and a more human, emotional understanding are being built into the Byrd Coaching platform. If you have any questions or comments about this episode, feel free to message UK Run Chat or Byrd via our social channels. You can also email us on info@ukrunchat.co.uk. In the meantime, have a great rest of your week and see you on the next episode. Welcome, Nina and Ed. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks
for having us.
Brilliant. And thank you for supporting UK Run Chat. Thanks for sponsoring the hour last night. How did you find it?
It was a lot of fun. Yeah, some really lovely, amusing, unexpected responses, which is exactly what we were hoping. Yeah, great fun. Thank you.
Good. Well, it'd be great if you could both just give us an introduction to yourselves, please, before we dig in and speak about Byrd.run. Ed, would you like to go first?
Sure. I introduction to myself. I'm a designer. Is my professional background. I'm from London in terms of geographical background. I now live in North Italy via Bristol, which was how Nina and I met. I got into running, if we all want the running story, when I was I got quite large after university. Slightly embarrassed to say. I stopped weighing myself after 20 stone because I didn't really want the bad news to keep coming in. And my girlfriend at the time dragged me down to the gym and sort of told me to sort myself out, which I didn't really do because I just sort of saw the calories on the treadmill and then would go out and buy the chocolate after that. But slowly but surely, something did click with running. And I sort of found that it became part of my day-to-day life, and that was where it changed, when it stopped being a sort of transactional event. I needed to be compensated for going out running by other things, but I actually started to enjoy it, and I started to become quite a bit faster at it. So I guess in 2019 at Berlin, I ran a 2:38 marathon, which still seems a bit mental considering that I couldn't run really for, that joke of not being able to run for the bus. I was that guy. So yes, did all right with that. And I suppose Byrd was, I guess we might get onto it later, but Byrd was sort of born out of my experience of all of the research and work I did around the training and coaching related to getting myself from that point of being really severely overweight through to getting a championship time for London Marathon and then going and running even faster than that in Berlin.
Yeah, amazing. That's an amazing achievement. And whereabouts in Italy are you?
So I'm in a small town called Cuneo, which is about an hour south of Turin. The Alps kind of do a curve round to the sea, and we're in the curved bit. It's lovely, the Maritime Alps here. There's some beautiful nature and some beautiful trail running. So very lucky.
Very nice. Yeah, I remember a school trip to just outside of Turin when I was 16 for a skiing
Nice.
week. Yeah, very nice. Very nice.
Yeah, it's good skiing here.
Yeah, our team meetings are just a tease now, Joe. See the kind of backdrop of the mountains behind Ed's head. Like, oh, God.
I bet. Nina, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. Hi, Joe. Thank you. So I'm Nina. My background actually also was in design, but more in kind of brand and graphic design. I was a brand strategist and founded my own branding agency 12 or so years ago, which I exited. And one of the things I did when I had a bit of time after that was lean back into my passion for running and that was where I met Ed in Bristol, as he alluded to. But I guess my background for running, I mean, running for me has been something I have always been into, to be honest. My dad was a marathon runner, and I kind of grew up around that whole time. And but it was always something that was very kind of in and out of my life, and very kind of yo-yoing. I was one of these people that would kind of like hit a kind of marathon training plan super hard and kind of like crash and burn, and then kind of like not do anything for months, and then do another one. It was always a means to an end, to a kind of competitive result, I guess. And that coincided with, as I was growing up, not finding ways to manage my mental health particularly well, and culminated in losing my hair to alopecia when I was in my 20s, and really making me have a kind of wake up to really rethink about how I could look after myself better, really. And I guess over the years, through working with a coach and embracing a different approach to running, and similar to Ed, that kind of approach where it actually becomes a much more positive celebration of the journey of running, rather than always thinking about that end point and bringing on anxiety about kind of, have I done enough to reach that goal? And not blindly following a kind of meaningless process, but just really understanding how it can be a cornerstone of your health and well-being, which I'm now lucky enough to have found that really healthy, happy relationship with my running. And it's an absolute pleasure. And that's what draws me to Byrd, really, is to kind of, is the approach that Byrd is taking in a similar way, which we'll talk about later. But, being able to bring some of my personal experience into that is very exciting.
Yeah. Thank you both. That's really great for me and for everyone listening to understand that, so those journeys that you both described there. So, and I'm sure that passion that took you through those journeys is being now channeled into Byrd as well. So should we talk about Byrd? What tell us exactly what it is. I know we had an intro on the hour last night, but let's if one of you'd like to introduce us, what is Byrd.run?
Nina, do you want to take that?
I'll take that. Yeah, I'll take that, because I alluded to it then. I guess it's Byrd is it's a coaching platform. Its first manifestation will be as a kind of personalized coaching product and an app. But what is unique about it is the approach that we've both talked about in our experiences is not being built as a one-size-fits-all plan that's based on hitting a goal and is goal-orientated and all about performance. It's actually a coaching mindset that helps you understand the progress of running and how that can, and celebrate the small milestones along the way to ensure that it can fit in with your life. And we've talked to hundreds of runners over the last year, and know that so many people might start with good intentions and an exciting goal in mind. They might work to a plan to try and hit that, but then what happens so often is life gets in the way. The plan doesn't understand their life and their complexities, doesn't adapt with them, and they fall off that plan and don't really know how to get back on it. And it can be a very demotivating and very, very destructive process. So Byrd is designed to adapt and be specifically built from the ground up for you, for everyday types of runners, understanding that life changes and it adapts. We talk about, you might have seen a kind of bit like the Google Maps of running. So, you kind of want to get from A to B, wherever that might be, and it's not necessarily a race goal. But there's not only one way to get there. And we all want to be able to kind of maybe take that detour every now and again, but know that we're still on track.
Yeah. So often we see online, so it's good you say that. We'll see people who are following a plan, and they're so into this plan that they must stick to it, that they might miss a day because life gets in the way, and then the next day they might double up, or they might try and do catch up effectively, which we all know that's it's going to lead to injury. It's too much. You need to adapt as you're going through these training plans, don't you, or through a journey towards a specific goal. Okay, so go on. Sorry.
No, it's also recognizing that running's not always the most important thing in our lives, right? I mean, running is a super important bit of our life. But I remember one of our beta users saying that I can't remember what they said now, but they said they'd had to not go out and see their friends because Byrd had told them to do something. I was like, please,
Right.
but don't do that ever again. Like going out with your mates is far more important than not missing a run, kind of thing. The whole point of why we're building something like Byrd is so that it does get built from the ground up for you as an individual, responding to your actual everyday life. And your everyday life involves socializing or kids or going to work and all those sorts of things. And running should be working around that, and Byrd's facilitating that relationship so you can keep your running habit going, but not at the detriment of all other things. We're not pro athletes where running has to take the top point in our lives.
Okay, so let's go into a bit more detail about what it is exactly then. So looking on your website, I've seen that it talks about an an EQAI coach. Tell us more about the product then, please.
So I
Yes,
guess I can. Oh, Nina.
that's good. I was just going to introduce maybe EQAI, and then maybe you can talk a little bit more about the AI part of it, Ed, as you will do that better than me.
Go for
Um,
it.
I mean, we talk about EQAI as so EQ being the emotional intelligence and AI being the artificial intelligence and all the data, Joe. So it's the power is in the combination of those things. And I think we heard again through talking to runners this year is, um, data is on the rise all around us. Yeah, we've all kind of plugged into our devices that give us so much data every day and quantified self, but the real richness comes in then actually what does that data mean, and giving that data some human meaning. We all know kind of we and looking at that data through the eyes of kind of emotional intelligence, that what we bring to it through our intuition, our feelings, that real coaching mindset, rather than just kind of data crunching. And we all know that coaching mindset is about asking questions and listening and understanding people, and working in that framework that still gives you space for growth rather than being just rigid data and stats. And that's what we mean by the EQAI. It's recognizing the holistic benefits and journey of running.
Mm-hmm. And just for anyone listening who hasn't come across EQ before, so that's it. IQ is the acronym that everybody knows, isn't it? But EQ is your emotional quotient. And I seem to remember back in a corporate day, being on a training day, and somebody was talking about your PQ, your political quotient as well, which is an interesting one. But
Yeah,
so so
that's
EQ
exactly
is
right.
the so
It's the
EQ is the emotional side. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. Yeah, emotional quotient is exactly as you say what it stands for. But we more commonly think of it as our kind of emotional intelligence, our human intuition.
Mhm. Yes. Um, Ed, would you like to touch on the AI part?
Yeah, I mean, Nina's actually covered it pretty well. But from an AI perspective, we're using just over 1 billion variables to crunch many numbers. I guess to Nina's point, the reason you need the human intuition and the human intelligence involved in it is computers are exceptionally good at making very fast calculations. But if you put junk in, you'll get junk out the other side. You'll just get it done really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what we've worked really hard on over this past year, and we've done lots of testing, and there's been lots of failures and lots of frustration at
Yeah.
computers doing things that we as runners considered dumb, is refining those algorithms, refining that artificial intelligence so it does things that are correct from the perspective of a human, which can sometimes counterintuitively not be what a computer would necessarily expect the right answer to be. So that's been one of our big challenges: is how do you make the machine understand the world in which we as humans live,
Mm-hmm.
which has been an interesting challenge and a lot more complex than I think we initially anticipated. I think it's fair to say we underestimated the complexity of using probabilistic models, or essentially trying to make predictions about the future state of an individual or the future state of a coaching plan. We underestimated just how many hundreds of thousands, millions of variants there could be once you start getting quite a long way into the future.
Yeah. Because that was one of my questions from looking at some of the stuff on the website, actually, is how does technology show empathy and understanding?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I suppose the quick answer is that technology doesn't, right? Technology is not neutral because humans build it, so it can't be neutral because humans aren't neutral. But technology has no concept of morals or of emotions in the way that humans do, and so part of what we've had to do is to train the artificial intelligence to recognize signs or patterns or indications that something might be up with the runner or the individual, to then be able to ask them questions to get user feedback, to try and give that sense of empathy to the user around, either saying, actually, you need to slow down in terms of your training at the moment, or actually you've probably got, you're just not being as confident as you could be in where you could push yourself moving forward. So it's that attempt as humans, we would, rein someone back in or push them forwards depending on where they are in their stage of the journey.
I remember a story. I think it was Facebook. Did they have some AI and they had to switch it off because they was talking to each other, and how they'd programmed it, they didn't understand it because it had become more efficient. It had changed the language and it had become more efficient, and they had to switch it off.
Yeah, it was Microsoft, I think. Yeah, no, there's been some horror stories of especially with natural language generation, which we do have within the product. Natural language generation is scary because you essentially are training it on the problem that Microsoft had was they were training it on real world conversations on the internet. As we can all imagine, there are some fairly unsavory conversations happening on the internet. And if you don't go in as a human to say, actually, that conversation about glorifying really awful politics there, that probably you don't learn to say that. So, it's like when you're bringing up kids, tell them not to swear. And we have actually had, not nearly as bad as the Microsoft example, but it did seem in the early days that Byrd was very obsessed with morning coffees. Felt like any run you went on in the morning, you got it's good. Yeah, it's good that you had your morning coffee before that run. Or make sure you go and have your morning coffee. It's very strange. I'm not sure how it got so obsessed with morning coffees, but anyway, we've hopefully removed that now.
Well,
we
there's
must
an argument to say that runners are obsessed with coffee.
Yeah.
Go on, Nina. Sorry.
No, it's good. I was going to say it must have gives you a clue as to our kind of human intuition as the people behind it. It talks about coffee all the time.
So you touched on that there's over 1 billion inputs. So how much? Forgive my lack of programming vocabulary, but how much AI programming is in this then? So like how many hours have you had to work on this, for example, for it to be that kind of level of input?
So that's an interesting question to frame it that way. We've been working on Byrd now as a small team so there's been 5 of us working on it for just over a year. Before that, there was probably a year's work of me trying to codify. I had a mad scientist spreadsheet that I was trying to make work for my own sort of training and some coaching I was doing for friends at the time. I don't know what that equates to in terms of actual person hours going into the product. A lot.
That's a lot, yeah.
And there's certainly a lot of lines of code, though probably by this point we've deleted more lines of code than we've got in, which is a good thing. It means we're improving as it goes along. Yeah, there's been a lot. We've been on a journey with Byrd as much as we have with our running. When we started Byrd, I suppose I alluded to it earlier about the complexity of the future and how we'd underestimated that. We thought we could use just lots of rules. You say, okay, well, if someone's been for a speed run today, let them go do a recovery run tomorrow. Or if they've missed a run today, well, we can distribute minutes from this run, up to a certain point in the next 2 weeks worth of running or whatever it is. And actually, we realized pretty quickly when we had other runners who had no understanding of that whatsoever, that the way that they would run, it was impossible for Byrd to actually function taking that rules-based approach. And that's interesting because it's, in terms of from an artificial intelligence perspective, that's the journey that AI has been on. If you go back to the mid 90s, very much it was rule based applications of, you would say this and then that would happen. And, it's that if this, then that concept. And
Yes.
what's happened over the last 20 years is actually AI has become substantially more powerful because machines have been given parameters or bounds to work within, and then they're essentially allowed to go and get on with it. You give them it's a series of probabilities, for example, that they will generate a certain set of criteria or things, and they go off and do it. And we've gone from this rules-based world within Byrd to much more allowing the machine to get on with it within the parameters that we're setting as humans. And that is working much more efficiently. So I don't know whether that answers the question of how much AI is
Yeah,
in there, but
yeah,
lots.
yeah. It does. Thank you. And and also what you're saying is compared to 20 years ago, then that the AI, in terms of being more powerful, it's. So I went to a conference about 18 months ago, and at this, it was a technology conference, and they played a telephone call, and it was an artificial intelligence piece of software ordering a takeaway.
Mm-hmm.
And the conversation was just seamless.
Mm-hmm.
You'd never have known. So it seemed, it from what you've just said there, it seems to have gone from something that's rule based to something that, when I heard it in action, it was just like it was just it was almost natural. It was like, well, it was. I couldn't tell the difference when I heard this phone call. It was incredible.
Was that that sounds like the Google uh their their software to be able to call people on behalf of users so that they could make a
It was
reservation?
that kind of thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And what's really interesting about it is that they made it sound natural by deliberately slowing it down and making it sound more human. Right? As humans, we have ums and we have pauses, and we stop to think about things, and we're a bit hesitant. And that's exactly what computers aren't very good at. Sometimes they just go full steam ahead. And it's been interesting within Byrd, there's a few occasions where we've tried to show how efficient the algorithms are, and so you can do certain things in tens of milliseconds, and we've ended up having to slow it down because actually what we discovered was, even for ourselves who are building the product, we didn't have confidence that it had done the correct thing, because for a human it would have taken, the calculations would have taken 10-20 minutes, and the idea that something could do that in 10 milliseconds felt laughable. So you had to deliberately say, pause for 1 second whilst I as
Yeah.
a human get used to the idea that you've been able to do this thing.
Yes. Wow. Just talking about the coaching side of it, and there was a question that was asked last night on the hour around running to heart rate and running to feel. So how much? I'm just, again, I'm thinking about the size of this project. It's amazing. How much of all that coaching and the EQ part of it, time and effort, and all the different outcomes have gone into that.
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time talking to a lot of people over the last year, and coaches actually being a really important part of those discussions. I think, one of the things that I guess as a team, we were anxious of at the beginning in talking to coaches was being seen as almost a competition for them. We didn't want to. We actually didn't want to feel like we're kind of taking business away from them. And actually, through those conversations, we've realised how complementary Byrd can be to what they do. And a lot of coaches, by their own admission, sort of say to us that the number crunching bit of what they do, and it takes up so much of their time, and actually the real value added stuff is the human element that they add on top, the asking people how they feel, understanding their life, knowing that they've got a heavy work schedule that week or whatever it might be. And that's obviously the ultimate of that one-to-one human relationship that we're not going to be able to completely replace. But we know that their time is limited. We know that some people don't feel like they can access a personal coach, and they don't feel like they have permission to have a personal coach. Some of them, I'm not good enough for a coach. So our aspiration was to be able to bring some of that human element and make it more accessible. And going back to your point around heart rate, and running to feel, that's one of those elements that a human coach will really help you understand how you should feel after each run, how you can judge whether you were working hard enough or whether you weren't, what sort of runs you should be pushing your heart rate on and which ones you aren't, and how does that feel on different sorts of terrain. And that's what we're going to be building in with Byrd through the feedback and encouraging people to understand their rate of perceived effort, rather than measuring heart rate and prescribing people specific heart rate zones to run in is less helpful than helping somebody understand how they can control and be accountable for their own feel in their run.
Yeah. Okay. So if I know that you're due to launch, is it September? Well, at autumn time?
Yeah.
How does it work? If when I sign up, if I went on the app, I'm imagining I'm going to get asked a series of questions. Am I by the app, or what's the kind of process that we'll go through, and ultimately what will I have in front of me?
Yeah, so there's a conversation that you go through with the product, with the EQAI coach. There's a few levels to it depending on what you as an individual want to share with the product, because actually one of the things we've realized is that people care about privacy, and they care about how much data they're sharing at any one time. And so we've worked hard to make sure that the product can coach somebody, even if they're only wanting to share a reasonably limited amount of information with us. But ignoring that side of thing, that's just bog standard normal person coming on. We will be asking for your running data. That's the most important thing for us, and we're looking for a few pieces of information around that. We're looking for how long you've been running, how consistently you've been running, the sorts of amount that you've been running, so your weekly averages, those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Speed that you've been running. We'll be identifying races that people have done in terms of if they are interested in performance stuff, so that we can identify, okay, well, the fastest they've ever done a marathon is X, and the slowest they've ever done it is Y, or those sorts of pieces. And we'll then be asking lots of attitudinal questions. So essentially how somebody wants to be coached, how somebody, where they want to go in their journey. Nina talked about it being like Google Maps, and how we all have different destinations, but there are, hundreds of thousands of different ways that you can arrive at that destination. So understanding how that person would want to be coached is very important. And with all of those pieces, you will then be given a coaching plan, and you will be able to see a few different levels of that plan. So you can see today, as in the next run that you're being suggested, or it could be a rest day, but assuming it's a next run. And then there is, if you want to look to the future, there's a detailed view of the future for the next 14 days, though, of course, with the explanation always to the user that will change depending on what they do, and it will respond to how they behave. And then there's an overview going further forward towards if they're aiming for a performance goal, or if they're aiming for a specific event, or a specific experience. then they'll see an overview up until that point. Because what we discovered when we were talking to users was actually if we don't show someone how they can, the sort of the map, as it were, between now and the destination, there's a bit of a lack of trust because, I mean, again, a bit like Google Maps, the main thing is you're being shown the next junction, but you also want to be able to occasionally, look at the entirety of the journey just to check it's not sending you somewhere completely daft and off track.
Yes. Yeah, very interesting. So if I was to put, well, I'm really tired. I've been up all night with the kids, and I've just had a terrible run. Would it update for the next day as well, or would it just be beyond that 14 days? Is it kind of like an instant update?
Yeah, no, it would update instantly. So we, and Nina alluded to it, after each run, there's certain questions that the coach will ask, and it will depend. You'll be asked different questions at different points in the training plan, or depending on what the coach might have seen within the run. So if you ran more slowly than you expected, or it was a shorter run than expected, or you ran faster, or you ran further, those sorts of things will throw up ever so slightly different questions. But we're interested in exactly that, right? Because, and it's part of the reason to be using perceived effort rather than heart rate, because heart rate can kind of hide a lot of things within it. You might actually have a reasonably low heart rate, but still feel really grim on your run. And asking the question about how someone felt, why they felt that way, and then asking them, well, what, here are some options about what we can do about it, which sounds best for you, is a combination of empowering them as an individual and making sure that the computer isn't going beyond the realms of what the computer should or could be doing, because it's very difficult for a machine. Ultimately, algorithms are blind to the outside world, and it should be the individual themselves making the judgment about, okay, well, actually, I need the training right now to be tapered off slightly, or actually, no, I'm fine. It's just, I was tired, but I'll catch up by tomorrow, kind of thing.
I find it fascinating, technology, and how fast it advances, and that it can do these things. It's incredible. Where do you see things in, I don't know, another 5 years or another 10 years with artificial intelligence or Byrd and technology in the sports arena?
Yeah, it's such a difficult question to answer, isn't it? I mean, if you think about how far technology has moved just in the last 5 years, it seems, it seems like you'd have to be a fool to guess at what will happen in the next 5-10 years. But I think the piece that we believe in at Byrd is that you will have lots of devices talking to one another. One of the things that we have deliberately done in terms of the infrastructure and the foundations of the product is that the product will talk to any other system that wants to talk to Byrd, and we'll make sure that Byrd can give information in the other direction if it's requested. Because what we can't do as a single company is produce all of the widgets and the gadgets and the accessories and sensors, and you never quite know where the new thing is going to come from. So at the moment, heart rate variability is a really interesting piece of technology, which of course you get from Whoop or from Garmin or from, various other manufacturers. That I have absolutely no doubt that there's currently research being done into other metrics, to other devices, to other sensors that will be equally interesting for how people can train or how people can think about their running. And we want to make sure that we're able to integrate that within Byrd. So, I don't know exactly where it's going to go, but I do know that there will be many, many more sensors and many different ways to measure more things about us as human beings in the coming decade. And we want to make sure that we're building a product that can integrate all of that learning, into the product.
There's been a real shift in, over the last few years in sports technology that's just very data driven into being more holistic and recognizing well-being and experience within that same space, and that obviously reflects our our move in health in general to be more proactive in managing our health, and that's an exciting area, as Ed said, that kind of combination of building in more emotional recognition into that process is very exciting in the future of health tech.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, runners, of as much as they've missed events, we've seen comments throughout, since the beginning of lockdown, of how much they appreciate running more holistically, and the emotional part of it as much as just having events to aim at, and and the social part of it's huge, but that whole holistic part has been more prevalent than ever, hasn't it, this last 12-18 months?
We've heard a lot of people saying that actually that space to remember that running is a fun experience, and it gives them freedom to have headspace and manage their thoughts, and help manage anxieties and everything else going on. It has been a lovely reminder, and I think if we can try and help people retain some of that understanding and knowledge, and augment the experience in slightly more than just performance and PBs and race goals, then that will be a really positive step forward.
Yeah, the interesting thing in terms of being reminded that running's more than racing is that it also helps. I suppose I talked about it at the beginning of the podcast about being able to realize that running wasn't just this transactional relationship, and it was at that point when it became part of my day-to-day life, when it became an actual habit. That was counterintuitively, that was when I got better at running. And I think that's part of what we're trying to do at Byrd as well. We're not trying to say, we're not saying we're anti-competition or anti-competitive, but actually, if you want to be competitive yourself, that's cool. But the first bit to work on is the experience side of things. It's just how important running is to your sense of self and giving a sense of purpose and control to everyday life.
Thank you both very much. I've learned a lot, and I could keep talking, keep digging in about this. I love it. Well, I know that you've got a wait list, so if people want to are interested and they want to sign up for that, could you just tell us where they should go and what your social media handles are and all that good stuff, so people can interact with you?
So if they head to Byrd.run, so Byrd, Byrd .run, R-U-N-D, R-U-N even. I think everyone can spell run, but Byrd sometimes trips people up. And the waitlist button is top of the page there to get themselves signed up. There's also the possibility to answer some additional questions to then join the beta list. So we've talked about how we've been speaking to hundreds of runners over the past year, and we've learned invaluable things from having other people running with Byrd. And I have no doubt we will learn huge amounts in the coming months from people running with Byrd as well. So if you want to get earlier access to it than the launch later in the autumn, answer the additional questions and you'll get on the beta list, and we'll be rolling it out through the summer to them.
Wonderful. Nina, Ed, thank you ever so much for coming on. It's been great to chat.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks very much, Joe. Enjoy the
Thank
UK
you.
men's
Thank you
community.
both.